All right, welcome back, everyone. My name is Steven Song, and as a first-year student in the Systems Design and Management program, I'm very excited to be here. I am also an active duty captain in the United States Army, and currently work at MIT's Lincoln Lab with Group 104. Prior to MIT, I spent the last 8 years as an intelligence officer, taking me to various assignments such as Texas, twice to Korea, and twice to Iraq as well. It is my pleasure today to introduce you to Christopher Berardi, an SDM alum, and currently a PhD student in the Engineering Systems Division at MIT. Chris is also a captain in the United States Air Force, stationed at Hanscom Air Force Base, where he works as a program manager for managing intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets. His specialty is planning and executing a multi-million-dollar portfolio of enterprise-level programs designed to enhance the Air Force's ability to collect, exploit, and disseminate actionable intelligence. Prior to joining SDM, Chris was stationed abroad and worked as a military intelligence officer. During that period, he led the United States Air Force in Europe's busiest intelligence flight and delivered intelligence support to more than 1,031 missions throughout Europe and Africa. In addition to earning a master's degree in engineering and management from the SDM program, Chris holds a bachelor's degree in business management from the United States Air Force Academy. His research interests include the applicability of network theory and improving visualizations of complex information systems. Today, he'll be sharing with us his leadership experiences titled The Importance of Failure and the Incomplete Leader. Now, how many of you like to fail? Just raise your hand if you like to fail. Okay, so we got a couple hands. So I guess the point is nobody really likes failure, except a few. But most of us think of failure in a negative way. But perhaps Chris's insight and his leadership experiences might change your mind. With that, I ask you to give your full attention to Chris and help me in welcoming him. Thank you.
So I have the honor to talk to you guys today about a topic to which is probably the only thing I'm ever qualified to speak on, and that is failure. But before I do that, there's a couple important things I got to point out. The first one is that, as Steve so eloquently pointed out, I am an active duty officer in the military, but you'll notice that I'm not wearing my uniform right now. And what that means is that everything I say, the Air Force will not agree with probably at all. And it's important I make this distinction. What I say now over the next hour are my own opinions, and you'll see shortly that oftentimes my employer's opinions and mine diverge. So please keep that in mind. The other thing that I'll point out as a critical caveat is what I'm going to present to you is not research. What I'm going to present to you is anecdotes and essentially a case study of one that is my life. So it's important that you recognize that either. Anything up here isn't researched outside that, although I will draw from academic research. This is not my area of expertise. But the question that the SDM front office asked me to answer is, how does SDM help grow technical leaders? If I could answer that question, I'd be pretty rich, right? I mean, how do you do that? Is there an organization in the world that grows leaders? A person comes in and a leader comes out. My argument is no. But there are areas to where academics and where institutions like SDM can help grow and enable leaders. And I'll show you where that is. And I'm going to do that by walking you through two steps. The first part that SDM can't touch, how a leader is formed. And that forming is through failure and recognizing yourself as an incomplete leader. And then the second step, after I've done that, I'll build that up to what SDM has played, and I'll draw two case studies from my life to help you see it. Now, what I hope is each person in the room takes something different from this, because you're not all going to be identifying with my story, because probably very few of you are in the military, but you should be able to identify with failure to some level, or you should be able to identify with success to some level. Being that as a male, I'm going to move right into it. So I'm going to talk to you about my leadership model in particular. And some could argue I would stop right here, right? This explains everything you need to know about my personal leadership model. But what I want you to take away from this slide, and it's going to build, is that this is the space in your mind where your leadership model resides. Whether it's in your character, in your mind, or however you define it for yourself, I'm not going to argue what the right way is to do it. But within that, each person has their own leadership signature. And I'm going to use the symbolism of this cube up here for the remainder of this briefing. Within this cube, each person has an individual leadership signature, and no two-person signatures are the same. Mine is very different from yours. Yours is very different from the person sitting on either side of you. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually the best thing that you can do is realize what that is and what that tells you about yourself. The important thing to know about this box in here, this cube in the middle, is nobody can teach you this. You're not born with it, and you're not taught it. It's a combination of those two things that happen over the time of your life. The inside this cube is a curation of experiences. It is your life. It's what defines your personal leadership model and what defines your signature. But the important thing, and where most people fail, is that it must be researched. And what I mean with that is you can't be taught it, but you must understand what you are good at and what you are bad at. But then the next question, or the next logical transition that you should make is, how do I research my leadership model? Lay on a couch, think about it, right? I mean, it sounds successful, but no. What I argue is that there's a different way to do it. I equate my mind, and stick with me on this analogy, to a basement. When I was a child, we had a basement in our house, and the stairs went down to the basement. At the bottom of the basement, there was one light bulb hanging up there. And you turn this light bulb on, it would scatter light throughout the room. But it didn't get the entire room. There were dark corners in there. Whenever my mom asked me to go down to the basement and get something, I spent all of the time I could possibly in that light because I was scared of everything else in the basement. And I think many people here can relate to that when they were a child. And the mind in which we operate, I think, is the same thing. We spend 80% of our time in our comfort zones. This isn't a bad thing. I don't say this in a negative way. We spend 80% of our time doing the things we're good at, doing the things we're comfortable in, and doing the things we're interested at. There's nothing wrong with that. But in doing so, we never fully challenge ourselves. If you only do what you're ever good at, how will you ever get better at other stuff? Or how will you grow? Which is why I argue that we reside here by choice, and we stay here by choice. But in doing so, we make the choice to only ever grow incrementally as a leader. Baby steps. So instead of transforming yourself, you're just honing what you're already good at, which isn't bad, and this is what most people will end up doing their entire life. It's not a bad thing, it's just a thing. But I would argue what really gets you exponential growth is what I would call those scary corners in the basement. To make the decision to go in those scary corners. In our life, you probably only ever spend 20% of your time in those scary corners. Why? You don't go into these places willingly. You go into them begrudgingly. You go into them because you have to, because you're forced into them. And when you're into them, you're scared because you are not sure what's in there. Those corners in the basement that are unlit are where the scary things are. That's where the spiders are. That's where the cobwebs are. That's where the monsters hang out. To go in willingly and face those monsters is where real growth happens, is what I argue. And this is where you'll see exponential growth in your leadership, because to go into those corners willingly or unwillingly and to learn something about yourself in those corners is more powerful than any amount of time you can spend in your comfort zone. And I'll give you an example from my life that helps demonstrate this. But what I argue and what I'll explain is this is the part of leadership that can't be taught. As you spend time going from comfort zone to discomfort zone to your boundary of your character, your model evolves and it shrinks and it evolves and it shrinks as you succeed and fail. This happens over 30 years, 20 years, 50 years. This isn't something that can happen in 4 years in undergrad or 1 year in a master's program or 2 years in a master's program. It's an evolution that brings you to where you are. But to grow as a leader and to expand that cube, I argue that you have to transform your leadership, and it only occurs as a direct result of interpersonal conflict of character. That's a string of words that I will define in a minute because it's a mouthful. To grow as a leader, one must continually enter into the challenges where the fear of failure is high, to go into those dark places, to confront the fear, and to see what comes out. There's a definition for this within academia. It's called crucibles. They've done a lot of research on this right across the street at the MIT Sloan School. In fact, the paper I cite here is from them, and they've done a lot of research. Anyone that hasn't read it before, I would encourage you to do so. They have a great number of anecdotal stories that are probably much better. But in saying this, they say that everyone is tested by life, but only a few extract strength and wisdom from their most trying experiences. And these are the ones that we call leaders. And this is the important thing to take away from here, is that a crucible is an experience and a trial. It's a test, and it's a point of deep self-reflection. Now, what I mean by that is what differentiates a crucible from an obstacle is your ability to go into it and to be humbled by the experience that you are in, but be so humbled that you question everything you ever knew to be true about yourself. You question your strengths, your weaknesses, and everything you ever thought to be true. It's not just going through something difficult and walking out the other way. That was an obstacle. You got through that. You do that every day. But to go through them and make it through them and learn something about yourself is what defines a crucible. Research defines 3 different types of crucibles. You can agree or disagree. I don't really have an opinion on it. They call the first one a reversal. A reversal is any point in time in your life where your life flips upside down. That's how I equate it in my mind to layman's terms. A loss in the family, a loss of your job, some catastrophic impact that significantly changes your life at a significant point in time, flips it upside down. Second one is a suspension. A suspension I equate to stasis. It's a period of time in your life you can't take a step forward or take a step backwards. You are stuck, but you are stuck in a time where you're forced only to think about yourself and there's not much you can do to get out of it. I equate this one to prison, or this one similar to something like unemployment. So if a reversal is losing your job, suspension may be the period of time between when you've lost your job and when you get a new one. The last one should be pretty self-explanatory. It's a new territory. New territory is just as it sounds. You take a new job. There's a new challenge. You're not sure how to handle it. You're in a new situation to which you don't know anything about, and because of that, you fear the unknown, and it's an uncertain environment for you. But the one thing in common between all three of these, and the one thing that's poignant about a crucible and what makes it different and what makes it important, is that crucible is a transformative experience. And this is significant because what I mean by this is because when you go into a crucible, when you enter into that dark area in your mind, if you come out exactly the same as you went in, you did not just undergo a crucible, you probably just wasted time and just went through an obstacle. Not a big deal. A crucible is such a large impact on your life that as you go through it, you come out a different person than you went in. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't always have a positive effect. Not everyone gets the same thing from a crucible that other people do. Research shows that there's two things that make people more likely to get success out of a crucible. First is hardiness. The ability to stand up in the face of adversity and not necessarily say that I'll win, but to say that I won't quit. And then the second and most important is the ability to grasp context. And this is going to be important, and I'll draw some parallels to this in my story when I go through it. You have to be able to understand the situation that you're in and how you got there to be able to learn anything from it. If not, the lessons you derive won't be the ones that are of importance. But if you can do those two things and you can go through a crucible, you will emerge a better, stronger, and more resilient leader than you went in. And to do this, I'll illustrate this with a story. So I've broken my life up into various epics, and frequently they involve failure. The first one involves failure, and it revolves around my undergrad. As Steve said, I did my undergrad at the United States Air Force Academy, and I know most of you probably expect a trite story about this one time I led 2 cadets and I failed, but I assure you it's not that. At the Air Force Academy, it's a really significant place and it's a weird place. I'm not going to talk about its academic prestige, I'm just going to talk about what it means to go to a place like this. It's something I didn't comprehend when I went there. But to make a decision to go to a place like this, people respect it. It's not because you're a high achiever, but it's because you want to pursue something that's higher than yourself. No one is going to this school to be a millionaire. No one is going to this school to get personal recognition, fame, make a fortune, or have a startup. None of those things are going to happen for you. The only thing that's going to happen for you is you will go through 4 hard years of school, and then you will go out and you will do stuff that nobody else wants to do. Making the choice to do that, people perceive as significant, and they respect that choice. I didn't understand that at the time, but what I saw at the time when I went to the academy, I have 2 grandfathers, 2 World War II vets. When I made the decision to go there, you should have seen the looks on their face and the way they talked about it and the reverence with which they spoke about it. It's almost like when they talked about it, they would say, Chris is at the Air Force Academy, and then there would be this pause. And it was like them waiting for the person to acknowledge the significance of what they just said. That's the high level of character and what they treated this decision with. I didn't understand that at the time, and as I started the school, I treated the Air Force Academy as I would have treated any other college. To me, it was this school with this military problem and this annoyance. Unfortunately, that's not what it was. But I treated it that way nonetheless, and I did stuff you would have done at a normal school. Skipped classes, showed up late, drank underage. But the brilliant thing about the academy is that there is instantaneous accountability. You show up late, somebody's there to catch you. You skip class, that's fine. You're going to get punished. Halfway through my junior year, I'd accumulated 300 or 400 demerits. I can't remember anymore. I really can't. Just to give you a sample set, most cadets graduate, I would estimate, with around 20, with probably a standard deviation of 20. So you could argue that I was an outlier and I was good. I just wasn't good at the right things. I had accumulated so many demerits in such a short period of time that it had tripped or flagged a mandatory review of my record. And I had to go meet with a review of officers, people at the academy. Because at the academy, it's different. It's not just a school invested in graduating students. It's not there to make money. The people that are teaching you at the academy and the people that work with you at the academy are people in the Air Force. To let somebody graduate from the academy is to acknowledge that you want to work with them and you have trust in them. Sometimes the trust of their life in you. So they don't take this decision lightly. So when I had to go in and meet that board, I went in, I sat in the room, they opened my record, they looked at it, and they went through everything I had ever done wrong. We were in there a while. And they asked me a couple of questions, and I answered them to the best of my ability. And then I left. They didn't offer me a decision that day. But a week later, I got a letter from them, hand-delivered. It said they'd reviewed my case. They'd weighed the factors that were there, and based on what I said and the paperwork in front of them, they made the decision that I did not have the conduct nor the aptitude to be commissioned in the United States Air Force. They had no faith in my ability to lead people, although they had supreme faith in my academic prowess, because that was unquestionable. They had no faith in my ability to lead other people, and they did not trust me to do the very stuff that they did. As a result, they disenrolled me from the academy. I went from being a cadet at one of the most premier military institutions throughout the entire world, the pride of my grandparents and of my family, and the fall from there to the second lowest rank in the Air Force, which is what I had to do to pay back the amount of time. Because when you go to school there, it's free. But if they kick you out, you now owe them the money back, and it's about $100K a year. So I was there 2.5 years. You can do the math. I didn't have $250,000 of whole cold hard cash. So I had to pay it back with my life, indentured servitude, if you will. And they made me the second lowest rank in the Air Force, an E2, Airman First Class Berardi. I remember showing up to my first base, and the fall from grace to where I was now had not hit me. It wouldn't. But I show up to my first base, my boss brings me into my room, my dorm room for the first time, opens the door, shows me in there, and he says, show up at 7:30 tomorrow, don't be late, and then leaves. I go into this dorm room. It's about 12 by 12. You can envision your standard dorm room. It's a single. There's a sink in the corner. There's a dusty bed on one side. There's a carpet, kind of like this one, a little darker brown, and it had stains all over it. It hadn't been well kept. And I remember distinctly there's an HVAC unit in the ceiling, and where it let the air out, there was smeared dust all across the ceiling. And I walked into that room, walking slowly, and everything was starting to hit me at that period of time. And I remember sitting down on the bed very clearly. As I sat down, a little bit of dust came up around me, and I remember sitting there and thinking to myself of everything that had happened to me from that point to this. There is nothing that will force deeper introspection into your life than when you can see disappointment on your parents' face in something you've done. Nothing as a child that will do that to you. So as I sat there in that seat, I asked myself, what have you done? What have you done to put yourself in this situation? I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually the question stopped being, what have you done, but what are you going to do? I still have no idea how long I sat there, but I made the decision that day that I was going to get up, and I wasn't going to let that situation define me. My life wasn't going to be defined by the fact that I couldn't take my responsibility seriously, that I'd squandered every piece of potential that I ever had or anything that was ever given to me. That wasn't going to be the definition of my life. And in sitting in that bed, I questioned everything that I thought had put me there. When I was sitting on that bed, I didn't do what most people did. I didn't say the system screwed me. I didn't say that I was here because the academy just had it out for me and they forced me in this situation. I didn't. I recognized the context. I recognized that what I had done wrong was the direct cause between what I was doing and why I was now here. I recognized that I was not a good person up until that point in some aspects of my life. And in doing that, you are amazed at what you can find out about yourself. But I got up off that bed, and for the next 12 months, I petitioned the academy every day, every week, every month to reinstate me. I went around that base, and I didn't ask people to write me letter of recommendations. I asked them to watch me work and decide for themselves what they thought of my character and if they thought well enough of it to endorse me. By the time the 12 months were done, I had had a letter of recommendation from every single person on that base from allowing them to watch me work. 12 months later, the academy sent me a letter saying that they had reconsidered their decision and they were going to reinstate me because of the actions that I had demonstrated. Although they felt that my disenrollment was merited, they said I merited a second chance just as much. To this day in written history, I am the only cadet that's ever been kicked out, men enlisted, and gotten back in. It's my claim to fame, and it's something I'm sticking to. They didn't know it was a claim to fame. They still don't think it is. In fact, I'm not sure they'd like me talking about it now. But nonetheless, I got back to that academy, and when I was done with that, I was a different person. I graduated 3 semesters later as a distinguished graduate of my department. I was changed. I was not that person that I was there before. The people that I'd known before didn't even recognize me. And this is what I bring it back to. In doing that, that had a lasting and an indelible mark on my character and on my leadership. Being outside my comfort zone forced such deep introspection that it changed me forever. It transitioned what I had. I went from having this soft, squishy leadership model, and it got hardened and forged into a block, and the longer I spent at it, and the longer I spent in my resolve, it transitioned again to essentially a rock. By this point in time, it was unmovable. I had so much confidence in myself because I had confronted adversity, and I had come through it. There was nothing that could stop me. After having done this, you find that the dark spaces in your mind aren't as dark anymore. Not because you have a light, but because you are not afraid to walk into those dark places and say, do your worst. I've come through harder. Better men have tried and failed. And it's when you can do that that your leadership becomes solid and founded on a rock. And this is why I think crucibles are so important, but such an underemphasized part of leadership. Any great leader that you can quickly adapt to in your mind, if you ask them, or the leaders that they study across the street in Sloan, if you even ask them what a crucible they've had in their life, I guarantee they will give you one or two examples very quick. Most great leaders, in fact, I can't say unequivocally all, but most great leaders have this defining moment in their life that makes them who they are. That isn't to say you should go out and throw yourself and find one, because that's not how this works. But every great leader just about has one of these. And it's this crucible that helps leaders understand their strengths and their weaknesses and to build confidence in the face of potential adversity. And in doing so, you concrete your personal leadership style. But in doing so, you don't know anything about how to interact with people. This gives you the confidence to be a leader, but it doesn't teach you how to be a leader. That's a different process and a different story. The next part of my life I continue and I call growth. And notice I don't call it success, and that's for a very specific person, or for a very specific reason. So after graduating from the academy, I went to intelligence school and I graduated at the top of my class. I don't say that to graduate, but it offered me the opportunity to pick any job I wanted when I left. There was a spectrum of options in front of me, but the most attractive one was this one job, this one unit that was built up of selectively manned people. And what that means is they picked people from all over the Air Force to come do this job because of their abilities. And there's something about that to me. I was like, I like this. This seems like a challenge. I didn't want to be a big fish in a small pond. I want to go someplace where I'm the worst at what I do so I can learn from everyone else. So I eventually went to this unit. And in this unit, my job was, as Steve eloquently said, to travel all over the world and set up deployed locations for various missions, humanitarian, and other military stuff that I can't talk about really. But I had 4 members that worked for me, 4 guys that worked for me. 4 guys that worked for me that were all more experienced and older than me. And I show up to this base, and I think I know something about leadership because I'd been through a lot. But I show up to this base, I wasn't really sure what my style was, though. And when I got there, I started trying stuff. I used them as my little leadership lab. And they didn't know it, and I didn't really know it until now. But I walked in, and I tried the first thing that you're always taught. The first thing you're taught in leadership is act like General Patton, right? Because that worked well. Just as similar in the commercial world to like Jack Welch. Go in there and act like Jack Welch. Command and control. Tell people what to do. Take no excuses. Get it all done, right? I did that. Did that for 2 months. And again, I'll remind you, the most amazing thing about the military is instantaneous feedback, right? I go in there, I do that for 2 months, and as I'm going to leave one day, as we leave work, we all wear hats outside, so I was grabbing my hat, getting ready to go out, and I'm looking for my hat, I can't find it. Can't find it. I look around, and it was 10 minutes, I'm looking all over the place, it's not in the regular places. Finally, I'm going around looking in our break room, I have no idea where it is. I eventually open the freezer. My hat was soaked in water and put in the freezer, and that was hard as a rock. I had just gotten feedback on my leadership style. It wasn't working. Try something different is what my guys were telling me. Noted. So I did. Next thing I tried the Stoic Leader, right? The one that just walks around, doesn't say a lot, but just tries to lead by example, right? 2 months later, they told me they had no idea what I wanted because I would never say anything. Okay? Noted. We'll try something else. Then I started looking around at guys in my unit to see what they did. And they were all great leaders, but they all had their own personal style. And there was no really unifying style among any one of them. They all did something different. So I eventually tried one of their things and somebody else and their things, and it always failed. My guys always hated it, and I could never get the results out of them that I knew they were capable of. Finally, in an act of frustration, the one thing I realized is that because each one of these guys did something different and they were all amazing at their jobs, that maybe there was no right answer. So what I tried something next. I said, screw it. I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to be myself, and we'll see where that gets me. I know where it's gotten me in the past, but we'll try it this time. So what I did was I stopped worrying about everything. I have a senior NCO that works for me, which is my second in command. I let him worry about the stuff that I was not good at. Fortunately, it worked out. He was very good at the stuff I was bad at. But what I started doing was focusing on my strengths, focusing on the stuff I knew I was good at and trying to get better at it. One of the big jobs in intelligence is communicating information to other people, researching ideas and then presenting them on PowerPoint. Turns out I'm not bad at this, right? I started to work on this day in and day out. Practice, 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 work at it, work at it, work at it. I would brief as often as I could, and I briefed everyone that would hear me. I would brief the leadership once a week, and as my guys watched me do this, they saw me brief the leadership, and they saw me get more bold in the stuff I would say, and they'd see the reaction. And they saw the change in me, and all of a sudden I noticed something. They were staying late at work. They're spending more time. They were trying to make their PowerPoints look like mine. They were trying to make their briefs go off without a hitch. They were working harder than any other leadership model I'd done with them in the past. Anything I'd ever tried with them never worked until I did this and stopped trying to do everything that they ever needed. And in doing so, I inspired them to work harder. So when this is the first time that I thought this might work for me, and I continued to do it, we went on as a 4-person unit to win the USAFE's best intelligence flight in Europe with 4 people, beating out teams of 50 and 100 in 2 consecutive years in a row. Just me, brand new out of intelligence school. And the only thing that I was doing different was that I wasn't trying to be something that I didn't need to be. I allowed myself to be the leader that I knew I could be and didn't worry about everything else. And we went on to have those successes. And this culminated for me, and this kind of set itself in motion for me with one very specific experience. This is when I was in Afghanistan for 6 months. I was working with a group called the Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force. These are the scary guys you see in the movies. And again, I was attracted to this world because this is the top 1%. And out of that 1%, there's another 1% selected, and this is where these guys sit. And I wanted to go test my mettle. These guys are the best at what they do in the world. They work harder and they try harder than anyone else. I want to see if I can fit in there. So I went there and I did it, and I had a very similar job. I was a deputy director of intelligence. I had 99 people that worked for me, and our job was to supply every piece of intelligence these guys needed to go and do their mission. The specifics of what we did isn't important, but one of my large jobs was very much like it was before, to communicate information to other people. And I had a project that was wrapping up at the culmination of those 6 months that I had to outbrief to my leadership before I left. And it was a long, skinny room that I was in presenting with one long, skinny table in the middle. The commander sat at the top, and then all around him was everyone else. And this topic that I was outbriefing had a relative significant impact, so there were a lot of people in the room. And I remember giving this briefing and walking in this conference room, and I still remember walking into it because everything in Afghanistan is dusty. And I remember as I walked, like I could feel my feet slip a little bit on the dust. But I remember walking around this room, giving this briefing, and everything was on point. I was so focused in this briefing, and everything was moving so fluidly, it was like everything slowed down. It was like I was playing a game in slow motion, and I'd hit the button to where I had this magic ability, and then it wrapped up, and I finished. But when I finished, the commander thanked me, walked away, without event. I'm packing up my stuff to leave. I put my computer in my bag as I'm doing this. Master Sergeant Thompson walks up towards me on the right side. Master Sergeant Thompson was a Special Forces soldier who I'd known. I would never give myself the honor of calling him my friend, but I knew who he was, and I believe he knew who I was. And he came up to me after, and he said, "Captain," in his southern accent that I'm going to butcher, "Captain, that's your M4. It's important for 2 reasons why he said this. The M4 is a rifle. The M4 is his rifle. He spent the last 15 years of his life honing his ability to use that weapon. And there are arguably nobody better in the world at using it than him. For him to compare what I have done with a set of Microsoft Office tools to what he can do with a rifle in a war zone, to me meant that I had found what works and that I could inspire those around me through sticking to what I was good at and what I knew. He almost compared and almost made the analogy that I had the ability to do more with a deck of PowerPoint slides than he could with that rifle. And I think if you asked him to this day, he would probably agree. But the important thing behind that is what I learned that day is that if I focused on the stuff I was good at and didn't try to be everything to everybody, that this was an actual leadership model. And it only came to be later that I realized that this was indeed a well-researched leadership model. It's called the Theory of the Incomplete Leader. It was published in the Harvard Business Review in February of 2007. The research, some of it was done here at MIT and some of it was done at Harvard. But essentially, studying successful leaders, they realized this one thing that's in that quote, that there is no perfect leader. The best ones don't try to be. They concentrate on honing their strengths and find others who can make up for their limitations. And that they argue that to be a perfect leader, you have to do all 4 of those things up there at the highest level. I wasn't. I was good at one of those things up there. I was good at crafting visions and generating enthusiasm behind PowerPoint briefings. I couldn't do the rest. I might have been able to do one or more very well. But it's when I stopped trying to do all 4 that I realized the one I was good at and what I could do about it. But the notion that there is a single person out there that can do all 4 of these things amazingly well is a myth. If you can give me one example of a person in your life that can do all 4 of these things really well, I'll show you a cognitive bias of your own. The person that can do all 4 of these things well does not exist. So if there's nobody that can do all 4 of these things, then why should I expect myself to be able to do them? If the person that can do all four of these things doesn't exist, why do we expect our leadership to be able to do them? And it's when you realize this, that you don't have to be everything to everybody, and that you can be the leadership that you're good at and stick to the stuff you're good at, is when this problem changes. And that's what the research suggests, is that only when you come to see yourselves as incomplete and that you're able to make up for your skills by surrounding yourself with people around you, do you really understand and really reach your true potential as a leader. And you can see this all over the place. For every person that's successful, there's a person behind them or there's a person next to them that is improving upon their abilities and advancing them. How does this affect the leadership model I've talked to you about? Let's continue along this theme. So based on everything I've told you today, what I think is necessary to create a leadership model are three things. Two of them can't be taught. One of them can. And this is the distinction where SDM and other institutions come in. The first one is a talented team. This can't be taught. You have to understand for yourself the significance of this. And unfortunately, I think it comes far too late for many people. But in identifying a talented team, you're not just outsourcing the stuff you're bad at. That's not how you look at it. You're surrounding yourself with people who are good at your weaknesses. And by doing that every day, you'll watch them execute your weaknesses exponentially better than you could. And in doing so, you watch how they handle your problems. And just based on your ability to observe them do this, you will automatically get better at them because you will see how people that are better than you at your weaknesses execute them. And in doing so, you will level yourself out as a leader. You won't become the best at doing it just by watching them. It's absolutely not true, but you will get incrementally better. So it's twofold. It's finding somebody else that can do something that's good at your weaknesses and being able to learn from them. That's the first thing. The second thing is the other thing that you can't teach, and that's a curation of experiences. Those are the crucibles I talked about. And through doing those, and through life, and through expanding that model, going to the dark place, doing battle with the monsters, you create heuristics. You create stuff that works for you, you understand what works for you, and more importantly, you understand what does not work for you. You understand when and how you fail because you've tried it. The only thing I ever considered myself an expert in was trying to fail over and over and over again. You'd be amazed what you can learn from that. But the most important thing from this, and the most important thing to any leadership model in my mind, or what I would argue, is that you grow confidence. You can be the smartest leader in the world, and you can surround yourself with the best team in the world, but if you don't have the confidence to execute a strategy, or to stand up in the face of adversity and say, do your worst, it does not matter. Because at any point in time, there will be another person that will take over and lead when you can't. So you have to have the confidence to do it, and the only way to do that is to stand up continually and fail or succeed. That can't be taught, in my mind. The last thing can be taught, and this is called what I would call, and I loosely term, pedagogical foundations. You'll find that as you go into those dark corners and you do those things, it's not enough just to be confident. I can run confident but recklessly into that dark corner. But once I get in there, the problem is that I have no idea what confronts me. I have no idea what's in the next dark corner. Just like you don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now any more than you do from tomorrow. In fact, knowing the future is unknown, right? But it is also unknowable. If it's unknown and unknowable, how do you prepare for it? And that's always one of the biggest challenges. How do you prepare leaders for the futures in their life or the challenges they're going to face when they're unknown and unknowable? You really can't. But what you can do is give them a broad basket of tools. And in giving them a broad basket of tools, all of a sudden it gives them options when they find themselves in a spot where they're facing uncertainty. The person who has a toolbox with only a hammer in it, it's amazing how quick everything looks like a nail, right? I got this, I got this, I got this. And you'll probably see people at work like that too. They've only got one tool in the toolbox and they try and solve everything with it. It's not a successful model, but the more tools you have in there, the easier it is to be like, let me look, I got a tool for this and I can do it. So these three things, you spend enough time on these and you grow these enough, all of a sudden you can make your leadership model stronger. Now, obviously, this is a little hyperbole and just visualizations to show this, but you can grow and you can armor plate your leadership model by a lifelong pursuit of these three things. It's not enough to achieve them once and then say, I'm good. I'm going to put it on autopilot now. This is a lifelong pursuit. It's not an instantaneous achievement. And this is what speaks to the value of places like SDM, the Pedagogical Foundations. To demonstrate that, I've got a story or two more. This next one is probably the second epic of failure in my life. This next failure is different from the first one and nowhere near as dramatic, and I'm not going to sit down. So I had gone, after the 4 years of doing intelligence work, the Air Force made a decision to make me an acquisitions officer. An acquisitions officer in the military is somebody who takes money and then buys large pieces of equipment, typically from defense contractors. So, hey, here's $1 billion, go buy me a new fighter, right? Easy stuff, right? Something that every captain in the Air Force, something that every 28-year-old should be able to do, right? Yeah, really easy. So I go from jumping out of planes, being in war zones, leading men on missions all over the world, and doing battle with terrorism, trading that all in for shiny suits, cocktail parties, and doing battle with defense contractors. I was so ill-prepared for the stuff that I was about to face that it was absolutely jaw-dropping. But in knowing that, I at least had the ability to know that I was not afraid of failing at this, but at the same time, I did not know where to go from there. Only a couple months after that, I started to look for a means to improve my pedagogical foundations, and what I found was SDM. At the time, SDM was very focused on product development and product innovation, which is essentially what I do. It just has a lot more money in it than the traditional product development innovation. So I've got 2 case studies I'm going to walk you through. Sorry, it's a little cut off there. 2 case studies I'm going to walk you through. The first one I'm going to call schedule magic. Anyone who's ever seen a Gantt chart before or done project management, you can see where the schedule magic on there occurs. Within the first probably month of my job, I was given this $350 million video architecture to develop a plan for. Okay. So it's $350 million video architecture that they were titling, it's going to be the Netflix of the Air Force. We were going to be able to stream Predator data from anywhere in the world and full motion video data so you could see these streams all over. The implementation and implications of this thing were broad. It was all over the Air Force and all over the DoD, and there could be no interruptions. So I knew nothing about this, so I hired a contractor to help me do this. And it wouldn't have been a big deal, but the contractor delivered this schedule you see up here. And anyone that knows this, when you see this and there's 14 parallel tasks, you might as well have not sent me a Gantt chart, but an arrow pointing into a cloud and titled it magic. If you have 14 parallel tasks with no dependencies occurring at exactly the same time and finishing at exactly the same time, the only thing you're telling me is you have no idea what's going to happen during that. This is like a red flag if you ever see this. So normally it's not a big deal, because if I'm not on a tight time crunch, I know these guys will get it done. They're professionals at what they do. But the problem here is that there's a large risk of rework, and there's a large risk that they'll overrun schedule, which I can't have, because any overruns I have today, there's a bullwhip effect. I slip a day now, it could be a month in the future. I slip by $1 million now, who knows what it's going to be in the future. So I had to make sure that the first time they did it, and they did it right. I have no idea how to solve this problem. I don't. I have no idea how to pull this schedule apart, and the contractor doesn't want to. Fortunately for me, though, I was in SDM. So I have this problem up here, and I know that there's a solution to this thing. I know there has to be, but I don't know how to get from A to B. So I build it up the same way I do most. I start with the Pedagogical Foundations. While this was going on, I have to be in a class here called System Project Management. This is a class, coincidentally enough, that teaches the quantitative methods of analyzing programs as well as the qualitative reasons for doing so. And it teaches you the status quo tools, but it also exposes you to cutting-edge research in the area. And one of the things that we picked up on, that I picked on, were these 2 papers that were out there about using DSMs, or design structure matrices, and manipulating schedules to understand where they converge and decoupling tasks. Steve Eppinger, the one in the bottom paper there, actually literally wrote the book on it. The book's outside on the table. I saw it when I walked in. But I have access to him because I'm here. But the important thing is that as I open these papers and try and go through them, as you guys heard, my background's in business, I only understand 2 things in this paper, and it's the introduction and the conclusion. Like, I don't know how to do anything in the middle. But that's not a problem for me, because what I have here at MIT is a series of resources that can't be paid for and that's invaluable. So I build a team. On my team is a PhD in physics from Cornell. Brilliant guy. He's never met a math problem he didn't like. In addition to that, I got a Saudi oil program manager, so probably the only other person within SDM who deals with projects and programs in the millions and billions of dollars, but in a completely different market. So equivalent experience, but definitely going to be a different opinion than what I have. And then I brought an Army Special Forces officer, because why not, right? I mean, when can you not use one of those? And then a head of IT for Russian battery manufacturing. This guy had implemented hard, huge, gigantic IT infrastructures before. He got it, he understood what it worked, and he understood the risks associated with it. Between the 5 of us, we had this problem, we had it down. We ran the numbers, we worked it out in math lab, and we read constant simulations on it. But the important thing is each one of us brought a piece of our leadership model to this. And it helped us shape the outcomes of this. And it didn't matter, and the important thing that I think we all took away from this is it didn't matter how right our conclusion was if we couldn't convince the contractor that it was the right conclusion. And I think that's a big takeaway that everyone on the team had. And as we moved through it, we eventually reached 3 analysis outcomes, what I'll call 3 conclusions. The first one was we helped decouple the tasks. We helped identify the prioritization associated with them, And then through analyzing them through the matrix convergence model we used, we were able to decouple certain tasks. So essentially take them out of parallelism and make them in sequence, one after the other. And in doing so, when we do that, we reduce the risk significantly between one task. So instead of having them have a roadmap saying, I walk into this month, I work really hard, and the project comes out, now it's broken down into individual tasks that they can do and execute one at a time and one at a time. And if they follow that sequence, the odds of risk and the odds of rework are a lot lower than it would have been. And in doing so, it was pretty successful. They actually delivered the plan a month early and $3,000 under schedule. $3,000 isn't significant because it was a $1 million program, but it was still a month early, which helped start the next program early. And we had this success only by the combination of everyone you see on that team up there. And the team you see up there and the pedagogical background that we got. And the important thing is that it doesn't stop there. There's a feedback in here. Everything that we learn, we all take that away. Because we've now seen a problem like this, we've encountered a problem like this, and we've overcome the problem like this. And it builds all of our leadership models because the next time we have to deal with a problem like this, it's not so foreign to us and it's not so scary. All of a sudden, it's in the light. It's a comfort zone. It's not a dark place. I'm going to give you one more example of after I graduated, and this is a little bit bigger case study and a little bit of a harder problem that we dealt with. This is the case study I'll call Nothing is Impossible because at the time it sure seemed impossible. So after graduating, I transitioned to a different program with far greater responsibilities and a far greater workload and a lot more money to deal with. I worked on this program for 2 years, and in those 2 years, I had to implement the $70 million upgrade to this program. It was the biggest upgrade in the history of the program. And this program's been around for 25 years, so which in DoD time it's a dinosaur. But it's the biggest upgrade it's ever had, and I had to do it in 2 years, and I couldn't slip the budget because $70 million was every last penny I had. If it was going to be $70 million and 1 cent, I was broke, and we were done. And that's a risk that we ran and something that we did. It was calculated, and we knew that going into it. But I've got that. $70 million over 2 years of project, that's what I get paid for. I can handle that. But simultaneously, we also had to renegotiate, draft, negotiate, and execute a new $100 million contract for the sustainment of the system for the next 5 years. Okay, my time's getting a little more demanding, right? Things are getting a little busier for me. But then at the same time, sequestration was occurring in the government. And this had a rippling impact on all of us, and no one went unfelt. The problem was that now I had to do all of these things, but I had to do them cheaper. So it had to be better, faster, and cheaper. And just to give you an example, so when sequestration hit, it costs on average, and this isn't my number, I think the Air Force published this, it costs between $15 and $16 million to run a fighter squadron in any given year. We just stopped flying a couple fighter squadrons that year because we couldn't literally afford to put the gas in the plane. That's how bad it was. So we all felt the impact, and we knew this wasn't just policy decisions that were forcing us into something. It was real. Was it right? Not my decision to make. But in this situation, all three of these things made this problem seem almost daunting. Right now, I have a large, complex socio-technical issue. At the very basic in academic jargon, that's what I had. Parts of it are intractable and irreducible, but certain parts of it aren't. And it was being able to recognize those parts that made it simple. So we approached this the same way we did everything else, with the pedagogical foundations that are associated with it. 3 classes in particular played a very shaping role in this. The first one, and probably most important, was engineering systems analysis for design. This is called real options in our lexicon here. And it essentially advocates that if you can integrate flexibility into your system and your design, that you can reap the benefits of that later, and there's many broad applications for it. Those that haven't been exposed to it, I would encourage you just to look it up, and see, because it can apply to just about everything. Next thing was power negotiation, right? I mean, I'm negotiating a $100 million I'm negotiating a $100 million contract, right? This is going to be applicable. There is an academic theory behind power negotiation, and I was surprised by how little I knew about it. My arrogance astounded me when we went through this class. I went about negotiations all wrong until I got the right way to do it, which is something, again, that I would recommend people look at, especially the Harvard program on negotiation does a lot of work in this area. And there's very few people that can't help. The last thing we looked at is information visualization of complex systems. I feel as engineers, we have this common problem. We'll create this wicked complex model that does this great thing, and it has like this gee whiz factor to us, like, it's approaching Laplacian, and it's this great outcome, right? Unless you can communicate that to a manager, nobody cares. And this is a problem that I think most engineering students have a hard time grasping until they get out there in the real world and they see it. It's not cool because it's got a gee whiz factor. It's cool if people can understand it. And this is what this class tried to teach us, is that you can take large structured or unstructured data, and there are ways that you can organize it that will be more effective and easier for people to understand. And in doing so, it makes getting decisions and getting support for what you want to do so much easier in life. The last thing we did was systems architecture. Big popular class here. In my situation, I had to design a sustainment program around a type of architecture. If I didn't understand the architecture and I built a sustainment model that actually wouldn't fundamentally function within that, it was failed before it even started. So the ability to understand that was absolutely crucial. So I built a team around that. After I've already compressed the problem a little bit, going even further, the team from this thing, because I had the ability to be here at MIT, I could reach back to the professors. And when I say reach back, I didn't ask them for help. So I reached back to Professor Richard de Neufville. Professor Richard de Neufville was actually the one that taught the engineering systems analysis for design class. He's also the one that coincidentally, again, wrote the book. I saw it outside as well. And what I would do is I would create models, and I would send them to him. Or we would get together, and we would sit down, and he would try and shoot holes in the model. I was trying to fail before I had an opportunity to fail in front of people. I wanted him to make me fail in his office, so I didn't fail in front of my boss. And we did this once or twice, and he kicked a serious amount of holes in there. But by the time I left it, I won't say this was a crucible, but I was emotionally scarred enough and had built up enough calluses that I knew what I was doing was going to be right enough to get the problem done. Coupled with that, I had my program management team with 20 years of system experience. Now, when I say 20 years, I don't mean collective experience. Some of these guys, particularly MITRE support that we had been in the program for almost 20 years. They had forgotten more about the program than I would ever know. So to have somebody like that is instrumental because the stuff that fell off my plate, they picked up for very easy. And the something I advocate for any team is 2 people that are younger than you, that work harder than you, and will pick up the stuff that you're not good at. What they lack in experience, they make up in zeal. And in doing that, you can get a lot done. Because the stuff I don't want to do, I've got 2 people that can do it. But each time, what essentially we learned, and what I'm learning as I'm doing this, is I'm reducing the problem to something I can understand, and I'm taking inputs from the outside world to help solve this problem. And in moving with it, so what ends up happening is I have this problem I have to reduce, and I have to reduce it in some outcomes and some analysis outcomes that I have to convince other people that are the right ones. I can't make this decision unilaterally. I need support from the outside world. But what's going into this, too, is also my experience. When I briefed what I'm going to show you on this next slide, I had to get permission of the PEO, or the Program Executive Officer, who's a general equivalent within the military. He had to approve my plan before I could do it. And I remember sitting in his room, not sitting, but standing in his conference room, and he had a conference room that was pretty wide, and there's a U table in the middle, and he sat at the head. And around him were just his technical experts in different areas, logistics, engineering, finance, contracting. And I'm briefing my plan, I'm standing up there, I'm hustling this thing off, and it's going really well. But then out of nowhere, I show one of my slides, and this guy in the front of the room, he was an older gentleman, a government worker, raises his hand and says, "You're going to do what?" And he said, "Good luck." Scoffed at me incredulously and dismissed me. This coming from a person who was significantly higher than me in the organization. But what I knew then and there was it didn't matter. He had probably seen what I was going to do fail many times before it. But because of everything I've told you up to this point, the last 40 minutes, this does not scare me. I'm not afraid to fall flat on my face. And that's where that experience and that leadership model comes in, is that I don't care about your criticism as long as it's not constructive. It doesn't affect me. If it's constructive, I'll hear it, right? But as long as it's not constructive and you're going to dismiss me and laugh at me, I've got the courage to move right through it. Let's make a bet. Let's see who wins. So what we ended up doing was we created a negotiation sensitivity model. In this model, we had 10 years of good data. In that 10 years of good data, I think there were 14,000, it's probably up there on the slide, but it's too small to read, 14,000 different data points I had to enter into Excel by hand. I mean, let me tell you about something I don't ever want to do again. 14,000 points into Excel by hand, and then from there we built a database and we ran a model on it. And what we were able to understand is there's 5 things that we could affect at the time of contract negotiation. And from those 5 things, we ran sensitivity models and built models on top of them that help us understand, out of those 5 things, what is the correlation to the overall end price of the contract. So not only what are the 5 things that I can touch on and affect, but out of those, which is the most important? And we reached the decision that there were 4 of those things. And I don't want to talk about them in particular detail. It's not really important for this venue. But those 4 things essentially gave me a roadmap for what I could do and how I could affect the outcome of this program. And these were all based on the things that I've shown you in the last slide. None of this comes from anywhere outside of it, and this is some of Professor de Neufville's original work that I used as inspiration for this. This brought a couple different outcomes. There's some professional and some personal outcomes up here. Professional outcomes, if you remember, I told you it takes about $15 million to run a fighter squadron every year. After we got approval to do this, we saved $11 million in a $100 million contract. That in and of itself is almost enough to run a fighter squadron, but that was on a $100 million contract. The beauty of this isn't that anything genius occurred here. It's not. Everything up here is derivative work. Nothing up here is going to earn any recognition. It's pulled from somewhere else and applied here. But it's being able to bridge that gap, and not only bridging that gap, but now understanding that this is probably extensible to other programs. If you can save $11 million, $100 million, what can you save in a $1 billion program? What can you save in a $2.5 billion space program? I don't know. And that's the beauty behind this. And I think that's what led to some of the personal outcomes of this situation. After doing this and building this, I feel like I went on a dog and pony show and a road show of briefing this. I had to brief the Undersecretary of the Air Force for Acquisition on this strategy. He liked it. I had to brief the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the highest. I mean, he's not on the top of the food chain. He provides the food, right? He's up there. This isn't a person that I can send an email to. And if I did, I probably wouldn't have a job, right? It has repercussions. Present this to him. And what they came to communicate to me, not through their words, but later, was that they saw something in the model that I used, and they saw something in the type of leader I was. And this is when it occurred to me that there is this archetype, for a technical leader. And it's not just somebody who has a flashy education, who has all this other stuff, who works in Silicon Valley. It's not the archetype. Those could be people that have the archetype, but that's not the archetype. What they said they saw to me, what they said they saw in me, what they said they saw in my work was somebody who had failed enough to have confidence to do what other people wouldn't even try. And then they saw a glimmer of scholarly intuition and ingenuity. I mean, in the military, I say this lightly, that's usually a derogatory term, scholarly intuition, but they didn't mean it in that regard. And what they meant was that if somebody was capable and somebody had enough confidence to try to solve the hard socio-technical problems and had the academic background and education to do it, that they could be able to do it. And I largely think that's why they sent me back here and why they continue to send people here, is that they recognize that this is an actual archetype of leadership. The technical expert that has founded his leadership model, not in his technical knowledge, but in his opportunities to lead and fail before them. So SDM's part in this is different. It's not that. It's not that because they can't do that. There's parts of what I've told you today that they can't do. The parts that they provided in this model was the academic and the pedagogical foundations and the teams. There are a lot of schools in this country that can provide you that same academic, well, arguably that same academic foundation. There's a lot of schools that can offer you that same team, give you that same access to those same highly talented individuals, but there are few, probably on one hand, that can put those two things together and put you in the same room with them. And the stuff that you can learn out of being in that same room with those two things coming together in that confluence of education, talent, and experience, it's dangerous. It's truly dangerous. So I'm going to leave you today with one last parting thought, and that's failure is unavoidable. I continue to fail every day. My leadership model may be an armor-plated rock, but there is very, very seldom a day that goes by where somebody doesn't kick a hole in it, kick a dent in it, scrape a piece of paint off of it, and try and knock me down a peg. And it's true. You've got to take the criticism and go with it. But I stopped looking at these opportunities as people attacking me, and I started looking at them as opportunities to identify weaknesses in what I do and how I can get better. Any hole that somebody shoots in it, it's an opportunity for me to patch what I didn't know was already a flaw in my model. And I would argue that everyone in this room should do the same thing and pursue this, because it's a lifelong pursuit of this and continuing to refine this model and accepting failure in it that I believe creates good leaders with the stuff I've talked about already up to this point. With that, I'm going to wrap it up a little early and open it up to any questions. Please, please.
Here's a zinger. You're in acquisitions.
Oh boy.
You going to straighten out the ECSS program?
No, I mean, there's complex socio-technical problems, and then there's unsolvable problems. I'm not sure where that one sits, but I have an inclination. Right answer. Yeah.
The Air Force spent 6 years and $1 billion and canceled the effort.
It's a failed program.
And they were too arrogant to hear bad news. Only good news would be reported up the chain.
It's a flaw of the military in general. Whoever has the mic, I can't really tell. Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
My name is Abdullah, SDM 15. I serve as a military officer in Turkish Army. First, thank you for your great presentation. I have a question. I work in Turkish Military Academy as a leadership trainee. I believe that learning from experience is an intuitive attribute. Do you believe that it's intuitive or can be learned? If it can be learned, do you have any specific advices for us? I mean, for not only to leadership trainees, but also for business leaders to teach to their team.
I do, yes and no. Again, I'll remind everyone I'm not an expert in this. I'm only an expert in failure. What I will tell you is that, having gone to a military academy and seen this firsthand, the difference between the people at the military academy, at least ours, I've never been to yours, I can't speak to it, is a lot of people are there just trying to get through. If you don't want to learn from experience, you won't learn from experience. And I think you'll see that as the difference between the cadets that take the most away from it and the ones that don't, is they're invested in the outcome of their education. Where when I was there the first time, you could argue that I left more there than I took away. Go ahead.
On a similar topic, have you worked with people who were very good in some of their technical areas, but had what I call collateral damage? They were difficult to get along with, or some other areas. Were you able to start to impart this model into them, and how did you go about that?
So what you're saying is their soft skills were lacking? I think that's how they say it in the MBA world, right? Their soft skills were lacking or absent. Again, it comes back to the thing that they have to want to change. You can't change people that don't want it. And there's a certain strata of people that are invested in doing one thing and doing it very well. I think we all have to accept that not everyone wants to succeed in life. Some people are quite happy with the status quo. They just want to go and they want to get a paycheck and they want to go home. And they want to do whatever hobby it is they have in their life. There's nothing wrong with that. Those people aren't leaders, and they will never be. But it's a choice they made. And what you have to accept it, and that maybe, and I don't know the specific people you talk about, it could be those people. They could have made the choice that they don't want to lead. And no matter what you do, it's not going to change. If they are leaders and they still act like that, then they've made the decision. They've made another interesting decision that probably isn't going to work out for them. And two, I think a large part of this, too, is something that you have to grow up with. I don't think that you can make a change as drastic as this very late in your life. I think after you adapt to yourself to models, it's like I said, the hammer. If you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I think after a certain point, and again, I've done no research in this, I think it becomes too late to put that hammer down.
Time for one last question.
Okay. Rather a naive question here. It is famously told, it's the winners who write histories,
Absolutely.
and not the losers. For one David may have killed a Goliath, but there are many Davids who have been slaughtered and unknown. And who will tell their stories?
Is this a philosophical question? I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, it poses the question, who wants to hear their story? They got killed by Goliath. I don't know the answer to that. I don't.
Okay, just on behalf of the current SDM students, we'd like to thank you for presenting today and sharing your leadership experience. I think many of us want to go out there and just go fail and figure out a defining moment now. So thank you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, bud.